Hello. Welcome to the stream. How it's going? Oh, I forgot to change the stream title, didn't I? It's probably labeled Where Made Something. Yes. Oh. Okay, so today we are working on, or we are starting, I should say, and working on our read-through of Mystic, the second book in the Nightblade Epic, of course, which you may already be familiar with. We got the final proof copy in the mail. Here it is. It's very nice. I quite like it a lot. And we are literally going to read this from beginning to end and catch any tiny, ditchy little details that still need slight adjustment. Hopefully most of the stuff we'll be finding is formatting errors. Little things in the actual physical formatting of the book, the print layout, you would call it. And maybe some minor little language or grammar things, but theoretically most of that would have already been removed in the editing process. So, let me get a light on because it's pretty dark in here. Ah, it's much better. Alrighty. Let's get crack-a-lacking. So first we read the cover. A Book of Underrealm, Mystic, #1 Amazon bestselling author Garrett Robinson. #2, Mystic, Garrett Robinson, Legacy. The woman was like a dagger of pure steel, meant for swift and deadly deeds in the night. Her eyes and hair were dark, her skin fair enough to seem ghostly. And about her shoulders hung a deep red cloak, its hood thrown back, clasped at her throat with a silver pin. Lauren could not see its design from so far away, but she would have wagered everything she owned that it was the badge of a mystic. Join tens of thousands of readers in an epic adventure as tales of the Nightblade continue to spread. A #1 Amazon bestseller, a perfect blend between the fantastical and the realistic that builds a believable world with great characters. Max H., top reviewer. Vividly descriptive, yet still imparts a hint of mystery. I look forward to learning more about the 9 kingdoms and Lauren's adventures therein. Jen, top reviewer. You won't even be aware that you're reading because you'll be sucked into the story's world. Seth Rakes, author of Sinner. The Nightblade Epic, Book 2. Mystic, A Book of Underrealm, Garrett Robinson. Mystic, Garrett Robinson, copyright 2017 by Legacy Books, all rights reserved. Cover copyright 2017 by Legacy Books. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, businesses, events, or locales is purely coincidental. Reproduction in whole or a part of this publication without express written consent is strictly prohibited. The author greatly appreciates you taking the time to read his work. Please leave a review wherever you bought the book or on goodreads.com. Interior design, Legacy Books Inc. Publisher, Legacy Books Inc. Editors, Karen Conlon, Cassie Dean. Cover artist, Miguel Mercado. Category 1, Fantasy Epic. Category 2, Fantasy Dark. Category 3, Fantasy New Adult. Second edition, published by Legacy Books. Logo. To my wife, who gave me this idea, to my children, who just make life better, to Johnny, Sean, and Dave, who told me to write, and to my rebels, don't forget why you left the woods. Get more legendary books. Boom. See? It's little things like that. Legacy Books is home to the very best that fantasy has to offer. Join our email alerts list and we'll send word whenever we release a new book. You'll receive exclusive updates and see behind the scenes as we create them. You'll also learn the secrets of what makes great fantasy books great. You'll also learn the secrets that make great fantasy books great. Interested? Visit this link, underrealm.net/join. For maps of the location in this book, visit underrealm.net/maps. Mystic Book of Underrealm, Garrett Robinson, Chapter 1. The sun broke the horizon east of the King's Road, spilling fallow rays across miles of empty landscape that ran down from the mountains far, far away. Amber light wrapped around the boughs of the forests to the west, painting them a heady mix of green and yellow. A summer sunrise, a golden dawn that promised a warm day with little wind for relief. Lauren greeted the sun with a raised water skin as if in a toast, and then placed the skin to her lips to drink. She had slept little the night before, too wrapped up in thoughts of her dagger and Jordell, and, above all, Zane and Annis. The wizard and the merchant's daughter could be anywhere by now, miles ahead on the King's Road or lying in wait around the next bend. Such thoughts spun behind her eyes in endless circles, and in the gray hours before sunrise they had pitched Lauren from a restless slumber. So after creeping from camp to relieve herself, she had settled down against a carriage wheel to await the dawn. From the other side of the carriage she heard Jem's snores, loud and insistent like a saw with rusted teeth. Though thin and wasted, the orphan boy slept, snored, and ate enough for 2 grown men. Now his noises brought a small smirk to the corner of Lauren's mouth, but it could not last long before her face grew solemn once more. Thoughts of depth are all the more troubling when dealt with alone. Jordell's voice, smooth and soothing, shook her from her reverie. She shifted against the carriage wheel, ill at ease. The mystic sat beside her, folding his legs and pulling his dark red cloak aside to avoid crushing it on the grass. Once settled, he placed his hands upon his knees, staring with Lauren into the east. For some moments they sat that way, bathed in sunlight and in silence. Not all thoughts bear mention, said Lauren at last, uncomfortable with the quiet. You alone would know, but rest assured that if they burden you too greatly, I bear a ready ear to share them. I am assured of little, and rest comes hard. Jordell nodded, and again in silence they sat. Normally Lauren did not mind the quiet, but she was used to the particular hush of a forest, a stillness filled with the murmur of life. She did not have much experience with the silence of another person, other than Chet, with whom no words had been necessary. Thinking of Chet brought his face into sharp, sudden focus in her mind, and Lauren felt a hollow ache in her gut. How long had it been since she saw him last? More than a week. More than 2, in fact, but not yet a month. It felt like 5 lifetimes. The Lauren who lounged now against the carriage wheel bore little resemblance to the one who had fled the birchwood on the heels of a wizard. Her thoughts went from Chet to Zane, pulling her to the present and to Jordell beside her. In her discomfort she had forgotten his promise, but now it returned to mind. You said you would tell me of the badge you carry. What is a mystic? Are you a sort of wizard? No, not that, though we have many wizards within our ranks, said Jordell. In fact, they are prized among our number, and so highly sought after that many think we accept no others. But if that were the case, I would not wear this red cloak. It is a mystic cloak, then. Lauren tried to muster nonchalance, as though she did not burn with curiosity. Jordell smiled. We have nothing so uniform as that. I must confess again my surprise that you know nothing of our order. Though we are fewer than we were in past years, we are not uncommon across the Nine Lands. You are rare enough in the Birchwood, said Lauren. Never did I see such a badge of office or hear of it in any tale. Our work sends us among the simpler folk more rarely than I might wish. Still, there might have been tales. There were not. Jordell shrugged as if that were answer enough. What then is your purpose? What sends you seeking after Zane? Jordell tilted his head, his mouth twisting. It is difficult to explain, and not all words are mine to speak freely. In the most general of terms, you might say we keep order, like the constables. Not unlike the constables. Our dress bears common origin with the red of their leather armor. Some of us might wear a red tunic, mayhap, or breeches, but rarely do we travel in our full regalia. Not all look upon us kindly, and many of our deeds must be done in secret. They do not sound like honorable deeds, then, said Lauren. Jordell smiled. So says the would-be thief. Lauren felt a flush creep into her cheeks. Tell me of my dagger that turns your face so grim. What danger does it bring? Jordell shifted where he sat. It is a rare weapon, well made as you have no doubt realized. You would find it difficult to dull the edge, and it will not break without great effort. Only a very few of them were made, crafted by gifted and magical smiths long ago when Underrealm was but a young place. And what have they to do with the mystics? Your blade is of special significance to our order. Any mystic would recognize it at once, and if some of our highest members were to espy it, you would be in grave danger, as would any who accompanied you. I seek no trouble, said Lauren. I wish no one any harm, and I am no fighter besides. I am aware, said Jordell, and it is something I admire in you. All of us must draw our lines in this world, and the one who will not take a life is not as weak as many would say. But you will find that not all agree with such a course, nor will everyone treat your own life with the same reverence. Am I in danger from you, then? Do you, too, see more in my dagger than steel and leather? Jordell cocked his head. I am someone strange among my order. I hold certain of our laws less dear, while some laws I value above all else. I would not kill you for holding the blade, nor would I readily reveal to my brothers that you hold it. Nor would you take it from me, said Lauren. You could have done so easily while I slept in Cabras. Why did you refrain, if it is so terrible? Jordell shrugged. As I said, some laws, however revered, must accommodate the time we live in. You bear the mystics no harm. Indeed, you did not even know of us until I told you. And while I hope you will cast the dagger aside for your own sake, that decision is yours to make. I will not abandon it. It is mine, taken as token of payment for many years of wrongdoing against me. By your parents, you mean? Lauren looked at him, surprised. You still bear some marks, said Jordell, pointing to her eye, and if such has been the lot of one so young for many years, those who raised you must have had a hand. Lauren touched the skin around her eye. She had seen it reflected in the water. Its nasty blue had faded, but a dull brown remained. You make a good guess, and for repayment I have only this dagger and the arrow I planted in my father's leg. But I cannot carry that arrow with me, nor clutch it at night when I remember their cruelty. Jordell thought upon that. The air rang with Jem's snores. Very well, he said at last, though I pray you will see reason to change your mind while you still can. I warn you again, let few people see it as you may. As few. Yeah. That reminds me. Hmm. I warn you again, let as few people see it as you may, and none from my order. If word were to reach them, and they learned where you came from, your parents would feel the full brunt of their justice. Curiously, Lauren's stomach clenched, and she thought of Damaris. The merchant had feigned ignorance about the dagger, but Lauren knew better than to believe a word from her mouth. For some reason she could not place, it bothered Lauren to think of her parents dragged from their ramshackle hut and put to the question, cruel and stupid though they were. But she said only such justice would be well placed. Jordell nodded. If you say so. Now let us break our fast. Leagues beckon still. Wait, said Lauren. Where shall we go now? We do not know where Zane might be, nor Annis. How will we find them? I have thought on that much of the night, when I did not sleep as deeply as you. I think that if the wizard and the girl did not wait, or were forced to move on, then they would have made for Redbrook. It is a riverside town well south of here, where the King's Road bends west along the border of Dorsey. In their place, I would make for Redbrook and wait for our arrival, for there are precious few other destinations along the road south from Cabris. They rose and made their way to the fire, where Lauren roused Jem with a hard shake. The urchin woke bleary-eyed and blinking, and he cursed mightily at the sun as it fell into his eyes. In the city we never saw the daylight until we were ready, he groused. No wonder country folk are half-mad. They had a quick breakfast of hardtack and bacon, both supplied by Jordell, along with sweet, fresh water from the river that followed the road. Seth, Jordell's driver, was a crafty man with a criminal look. He had a sharp smile and a cruel laugh that came too easily. Many scars crisscrossed his shaved head from crown to jaw. Lauren viewed the man with some apprehension, but Jordell seemed easy in his company. I've seen nothing but birds this morn, sir, Seth told Jordell in the middle of their meal. I've had my bow ready just in case. Do you think the constables follow us? Said Lauren. The constables? No, said Jordell. But they are not the only ones who seem to bear a grudge against you. The reach of the family Yaren is long, and their fingers never stop grasping. I will cut those fingers off they poke around us, said Seth. Jem laughed, but Lauren only felt her appetite wane. Hey, what's up, Clundy man? Chapter 2. The road remained clear for many days, rolling down before them as the stream plunged close and then far again. Hours passed dull and slow, broken only by the occasional scampering rush of a startled animal by the side of the road. At first Jem spent much time marveling at the sights, remarking often on how he had never seen such things within the walls of Cabris. Every so often he would take in a deep breath for no reason, letting it out in a long, slow whoosh. He walked beside the carriage when they moved slowly, laughing as grass tickled his bare feet. He yelped with delight when they saw a quail and her chicks walking nearby, and he would chase butterflies whenever they passed a patch of flowers. Long time no see. It's going good. Going good. We're doing the final read-through edit of Mystic. That's what we're working on right now. My chat thingy is a little bit... His delight did not last long. Well into the second day they passed an inn, and Jem brightened considerably, but Jordell bade Seth to pass without stopping. No one must remember our faces, he said. What if Zane and Anna stopped at the inn, said Lauren. Look at it, said Jordell. Do you see their carriage? And if I am cautious of letting others see our faces, consider Zane's fear of being recognized. After that, Jem grew quiet, only sitting and looking at everything without comment. Then, early on the third day, he began to complain. Lauren, I am bored, he proclaimed. Is that italicized? It is not. Lauren, I am bored, he proclaimed. An intellect such as mine was meant for greater feats than sitting quiet in a carriage all day. Scholarly pursuits, you mean, said Lauren, hiding a smile. Yes, exactly, said Jem, missing the jibe in her tone. Soon the grass all looks the same, and the birdsong merely a noise. I may have known every building in Cabris, but I could at least count on the people to hold my interest. Now there is nothing and no one, only endless miles of open ground and a sky that stretches forever. And that sun! If you wish, I have a book you could read, said Jordell. Jem brightened. Ah, something at last to stimulate the mind. Jordell bade Seth stop the carriage and went into his bags, from which he pulled a heavy leather tome. This he threw into Jem's lap, causing the boy to grunt and rub his stomach where the corner had poked him. But one glance at the title turned his face sour like bad milk. Turned Jem's face. Because his was previously Jordell. Yeah, tiny thing. One glance at the title turned Jem's face sour like bad milk. But one glance at the title turned Jem's face sour like bad milk. A treatise on the great families of the Nine Lands, their origins and lineage, read Jem. He shoved the book away with disgust. I thought you had something exciting. The history of the Nine Lands has seldom been dull, said Jordell. There you will find war and death, heroes and villains, and the rise and fall of a great many houses. Jem looked at the tome distrustfully and pulled it open. Lauren tried to peek over his shoulder, but the squiggles on the page might as well have been chicken scratchings in the dirt. She had never learned to read. After they had rolled forwards for a few minutes more, Jem gave a little while. Minutes. Underrealm doesn't have minutes. After they had rolled forwards for a little while more, Jem gave a frustrated growl and shoved the book aside. After they had rolled forwards for a little while more, Jem gave a frustrated growl and shoved the book aside. Oh, certainly there are great men and women aplenty in here, described with all the vim and vigor of grave markings. King Lirin III of Dulmoon, he begat 3 sons and met his end in a hurricane off the coast of Hedgemond. He snorted and struck his head out the window to watch the grass roll by. His complaints continued through the day, occupied most of the next, and then worsened when the forest vanished to the east, leaving only open grassland running to the high mountains far away. At last Lauren wearied beyond tolerance of Jem's nagging, and she did not like the way Seth glowered at the boy, fingering the knife at his belt. She cuffed Jem's head and threw the book full into his chest. Be silent, she snapped. Read the book Jordell was kind enough to give you, and if we hear another peep of complaint, I will tie you to a wagon wheel. Jem read, with much grumbling and many dark looks from beneath hooded lids, but at least he stopped complaining out loud. At midday meal, Lauren thought of something else to keep him entertained. She went to where he sat on the ground, sullen and staring. I need something of you. He looked up in a pout. What? You were one of Auntie's best pickpockets, were you not? His eyes flashed. Certainly. She always said so. Then teach me. A slow smile crept across his lips, and he leapt to his feet. That is something I can do. I warn you, of course, that you should not expect to become so expert as I without many years of practice. Lauren nodded, careful not to smile. Of course. And you must call me master while I train you. Lauren cuffed the back of his head, but gently. Just teach me. From then on, Jem became a bearable traveling companion. They could do nothing physical while they rode, of course, but during those times he would tell her tips and tricks he had learned through a lifetime of practice, and whenever they stopped, he would have Lauren practice. Don't like that double use of the word practice. How you doing there, thesaurus.com? Why are you taking so long to load? They could do nothing physical while they rode, of course, but during those times he would tell her tips and tricks he had learned in the years he had spent on the streets of Cabris, and whenever they stopped he would have Lauren practice. Jordell even volunteered to act as a mark, his back turned while Lauren tried to remove a purse from his belt or from a pocket within his cloak. Lauren learned many things she had never considered. The art, as Jem called it, required more than clever handwork. Often it was best to find a mark who seemed distracted or whose valuables lay within easy reach. A merchant might have a fat purse, but it would be guarded jealously. The merchant's escort, however, had eyes only for her master, and might have a jeweled brooch or a bracelet that could be lifted more easily. Even Seth grew interested in the lessons after a time, and when he spoke, Lauren could tell he was no stranger to snatching purses. Teamwork is best, he growled. Girl, tell our urchin what a big, strong man he is. Flutter your eyelids a bit. Lauren stared at him, her mouth hanging open, while Jem grinned at her. What? Stammered Lauren. Try, girl, said Seth. Do your best. Pretend you're a professional. Lauren gulped and looked at Jem. The boy smiled back, clearly enjoying her discomfort. I have rarely seen such large muscles on such a small boy. Jem scowled. Is that your idea of a compliment, calling me small? And there we have it, said Seth, raising his hands. Within them Lauren saw Jem's small knife, as well as a purse she never knew the boy carried. What? Cried Jem, feeling around his belt in the now empty scabbard. How did you... Distraction, said Seth. He held the purse and knife just above Jem's grasping hands. It is better when your partner knows what they are doing, of course, but almost anyone with pretty eyes will do. Lauren flushed and rubbed her arms. She did not much care for Seth's compliments, nor not with his cruel smile. One day, when a week had passed, Seth stopped the carriage. Jordell frowned and stuck his head out the window. What is it? Something you should see, sir, said Seth. Something you ought to see, said Seth. That's a lot of alliteration. I'm a big fan of alliteration, but that's a lot. One day when a week had passed, Seth stopped the carriage. Jordan... Oh, I gotta change it in the other ones, too. Hehe. What is it? Seth's voice came lower than even its usual growl. Something you ought to see. Stay here, Jordell murmured and climbed out. Lauren and Jem gave each other barely a glance before slipping out after him. I forgot about that. Jordell and Seth stood by the lead horse, staring ahead. Lauren went to the mystic's side, Jem lurking just behind and beside her. Many paces ahead of the carriage, the ground lay trampled as though by many feet. The trail cut straight across the road, the grass squashed as far as Lauren could see in either direction. I don't need my headphones on, do I? Answer? No. No, I do not. Give me one sec, guys. Megan needs me to do a thing. All right. Sorry about that. Hoobadoob. All right, back to it. Where were we? Jordell frowned and stuck his head out the window. What is it? Seth's voice came lower than even its usual growl. Something you ought to see. Stay here, Jordell murmured and climbed out. Lauren and Jem gave each other barely a glance before slipping out after him. Jordell and Seth stood by the lead horse, staring ahead. Lauren went to the mystic's side, Jem lurking just behind and beside her. Many paces ahead of the carriage, the ground lay trampled as though by many feet. The trail cut straight across the road, the grass squashed as far as Lauren could see in either direction. What did that? Said Lauren. It looks like the passing of an army. And a sizable one, agreed Jordell, though I told you to stay in the carriage. Moving west, if I am not mistaken, said Seth. You are not. Pull the carriage off the road. I would know what such a force is doing here in the south of Selvin. We're doing the read-through of Mystic. So we have what is basically supposed to be the final version of the book. Final. So we are doing one last read-through of it to catch any small, tiny, titchy little details before we publish it. Any formatting things with the actual print layout of the book, as well as any like tiny little grammar, spelling, stuff like that I have attention on. You were not. Pull the carriage off the road. I would know what such a force is doing here in the south of Selvin. In a few minutes it was done. Seth found a small thicket of trees surrounded by low shrubs, drew the carriage within them, and hobbled the horses. Jordell discarded his cloak and the long sword he sometimes wore at his belt, pulling from his luggage a shorter blade as well as a long dirk. The short sword he strapped to his belt, while the dirk went into his boot. Stay here and wait for my return, he said, cinching the weapons tight. I will not be long, that I promise. I will not sit here and wait for you, said Lauren. I want to come as well. Jordell smiled. I spoke to Seth, not to you. In fact, I rather hoped you would come. Lauren started, taken aback. You did? Why? I have told you many times how our fates seem intertwined, Lauren of the family Nelda. You have proven yourself no simple young woman, and useful in situations when most would discount you. Besides, you have said already that you mean to do great things in the Nine Kingdoms. I would help you learn something of them first. Mighty deeds may be the stuff of songs, but oftentimes a small action is better if it is guided by wisdom. Lauren flushed and turned to hide her face. I hope not to disappoint, she said, trying to sound flippant. I am sure you will not. Very well, said Jem. If we must be off, let us be off. Lauren and Jordell turned to him at the same time. I am sorry, Master Pickpocket, said Jordell gently. I did not mean for you to come as well. Someone must help Seth guard our carriage. Jem glared at him. I am young, but not a fool, he said. If Lauren goes, so will I. Her safety lies in my hands. And in mine, said Jordell, and I will take no risk with it. My decision is final. We shall return swiftly. He turned away as Jem's expression fell. Lauren sidled up to the boy and put a comforting hand on his shoulder. I'm sure it will be boring. Do not mock me. Jem's voice was sullen. It is the first bit of excitement we have had in many days, and you are both leaving me out of it. Jordell does not know that you are a mighty warrior, said Lauren, nudging his chin with her hand, and a brilliant scholar. And a wise adviser, said Jem, somewhat mollified. Give him time. He's had almost as much time with me as with you, yet I am excluded. Lauren shrugged. She did not understand much better than Jem, but she thought she might have an inkling of why Jordell requested her presence. The mystic was most interested in her dagger, and likely he would be loath to let her out of his sight while it stayed on her belt. But that explanation required too much time, and they had to be off. Jordell beckoned, and Lauren left Jem with a final ruffle of his hair. They slipped out through the trees towards the trampled grass, turning to follow it west. Soon the road vanished behind them as they crept between low hills. We must stay silent and hidden, murmured Jordell. You seem to have some knack for stealth. Use it now. I am not looking for a fight, only for information. I have never looked for a fight, said Lauren, though that has not always mattered. Jordell nodded and led her on. Soon they came to the bank of the river they had been following. There they found signs that a temporary bridge had been constructed for passage, but it had already been torn down. They had to walk a short distance south before they could find a place shallow enough to ford. The bank was silty and loose, and Jordell stumbled once or twice as they slid down. Lauren felt no small blush of pride at her own sure footing. Just after they reached the far bank, they heard a splash behind them. Jordell whirled and drew his sword. Lauren's dagger was in her hand before she could think to draw it. But when she saw the source of the noise, she rolled her eyes and quickly returned the blade to its sheath. Sky above, Jem, what are you doing? The urchin sat on his rear in the river's shallows. Somehow he looked sheepish and proud all at once. At Lauren's hissed words, he raised his chin. I told you, where you go, so go I. I waited until Seth stepped away from the carriage and then came after you. Go back, said Lauren. We do not know what awaits us. Then you do not know that it is dangerous, said Jem. He got to his feet and waded towards them. He was much shorter than Lauren and seemed barely half Jordel's height, so the water came nearly to his chest. I will be invisible, a shadow at your back and quieter than a mouse. A large mouse to make a splash like you just did, said Lauren. She looked at Jordel, expecting to see him looking angry. Instead, she found a small smile tugging at his lips. It seems mine is not the only fate you have drawn into your own, Lauren, and if the boy cannot be kept away, then let him come. But hear this. The mystic grew solemn again and pointed his sword at Jem. If you give us away, I will flay you myself. Do you understand? Jem placed a hand on the flat of Jordel's blade and pushed it away. I have been flayed by worse than you, or I am nearly sure I have. He looked at Lauren. What exactly is flaying? It means he will peel his skin from your body while you watch. I will likely help him hold you down. Jem swallowed. You will find me a slippery mouse to catch if you try. Most of the bravado had fled his voice. As long as we all understand each other, said Jordel. Come, our quarry awaits. Our quarry. He set off at once, and Jem splashed out of the shallows to trot along at Lauren's heels. They crested one rise after another, following the wide swath of trampled land, so obvious that even Jem could see it easily. But the end of the trail came suddenly and took them all unawares. Lauren led the way up the riverbank. Nope. They left the river a while ago. Lauren led the way up a final hill, and suddenly an army of hundreds stretched out before them. He splashed in the river, but then they left the river. Chapter 3. Jordel snatched Lauren's shoulder and threw her to the ground. She heard the small thud of Jem's tiny frame hitting the grass a moment later. Hold perfectly still, said Jordel, falling beside her. Do not move a muscle. Lauren did, but all... Lauren did when he just said do not. But already Lauren could tell they had nothing to fear. The nearest tents lay far away, and even the sentries stood too distant to be easily seen. She studied the force. Lauren knew herself to be terrible at numbers, but she thought there must be several hundreds of foot soldiers and 100 or more of horses. These were on the far side of the army, though Lauren knew she and her friends would be ridden down in minutes if the alarm were raised. Minutes do not exist in Underrealm. Hello again, Clundy Man. Hey, what's up, 66? I don't think chat's frozen on stream. It is my formatted for print version, and I use Scrivener to format for Kindle. I don't know why Twitch flagged it for review. They are exclusively on Amazon. I do not sell on Nook. Nook is a pretty terrible platform. Hey, Protostorms, what is up? I completely understand, Protostorms. I'm actually struggling right now to make more time to read myself. All the books that I write currently are in the same world. I wrote some earlier books before I started writing the Underrealm books, and those were not. But ever since Nightblade, everything that I have written and will be writing for the foreseeable future is all in the same world. That depends what you mean, chicken sandwich. Off the top of my head, no, but considering that I want to be a filmmaker one day, and like all of my writing career is built towards making movies and television at some point in the near future, there are certain things that I want to do as a filmmaker. Like on my bucket list are to make a Marvel movie and to make a Star Wars movie. I want to do those in my lifetime, you know? I am going to actually be creating another world, but not for a long time. 6-6, you should definitely write the rest of the trilogy. It would be my advice. I actually just made a video about how to launch a trilogy of books at the start of your series. It's coming out on my Patreon on Wednesday. Shameless self-promotion. Well, it depends on if you're going to release it or not. If you're planning on releasing it at all, and you can turn it into a trilogy, I would highly recommend doing that. It's the best way to start an author career. Uh-oh. My mouse died. Well, my trackpad died. I'm going to go get new batteries for it. Be right back. Do. Yes, I own a Mac, so I have a trackpad. Hey, what's up, Grover? KJ Jones! Same stuff, different year. Isn't that the story of life? You messaged me on it on Facebook? I didn't see it. Oh, awesome, Grover. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Are you sure you messaged me, KJ Jones? I don't see a message. Banhammer raised 6-6. Oh, that's awesome, Grover. Yes, a bit of study like that. Oh, there you are. Chicken sandwich. Well played. That's good. It's very good. I see what you did there, and I like it. Yo, I don't want to talk about politics here. I saved that for my YouTube channel. Everything's a political allegory if you work hard enough to interpret it that way. Yes, please. Thank you. Mucho apreciado. Darth Smork, greetings. Okay, I think we got all the units of measurement and distance. I think. We'll see. Can we talk about the politics of the Underrealm? I need to keep reading, but you are welcome to talk about the politics of the Underrealm. All right. Chapter 3. The army did not look like Lauren thought an army ought to. When old Bracken had told her stories of great battles, he had spoken of men all in their king's colors, blue and white for Selvin, red and yellow for Dorsey, and every other kingdom with its scheme. By the way, quick note, 6-6. All you know from book 1 is that there's a king and he has a law. Actually, she has a law. King is a gender-neutral title in Underrealm. It's what happens when you assume. It's what happens. It's what happens when you assume. It's what I meant to say there, clearly. I have self-published all of my novels. For a brief moment earlier this year, I signed my existing novels over to a publisher. That did not go well. I am not with that publisher anymore, and I am going to be indie publishing. I prefer the term indie publishing because you don't actually do everything yourself, and people who do everything themselves, haha, do, usually turn out pretty bad books, Darth Smork. Well, would it? I'll say that I understand why you would assume that, but that's one of those things that I like to break expectations in my books. Yeah, for sure. No, that's just one of those. That's one of those breaking, gender breaking things that I like to do in Underrealm. Like, for example, in the whole first scene in Nightblade, when Lauren is talking about her parents are requiring a dowry. A dowry was something that a wife was supposed to bring to a marriage on Earth, but that's not the case in Underrealm. So little things like that. Well, the assumption is incorrect. See what I mean? Like I said, I understand why you assumed that, but your assumption is incorrect. So you can't say like the assumption isn't correct just because there's a good reason behind it. See what I mean? That's like saying, like, 6-6, for example. I have no idea whether you're a guy or a girl, or non-binary or anything like that. So if I assume that you're a guy, it might be a reasonable assumption since most people who hang out on Twitch are. However, if you are a woman or non-binary, then my assumption is wrong. You get what I mean? It's a reasonable assumption, but it's incorrect. All right, so where were we? Lauren did, but already... No, we were in minutes if the alarm were raised. The army did not look like Lauren thought an army wanted to... When old Bracken had told her stories of great battles, he had spoken of men all in their king's colors, blue and white for Selvin, red and yellow for Dorsey, and every other kingdom with its scheme. But now she saw men wearing every color under the sky, from bright and vivid hues to dull browns and grays. She saw many gathered with bows and many in another part of the camp with spears, but none of the organization she would have expected. What kingdom do they hail from? She murmured. No kingdom, said Jordell, with a firm set to his jaw. These are mercenaries. Well, that is good. I feared for a moment that some foe had crossed into Selvin. Lauren did not know much of the machinations between the Nine Lands. Yeah, exactly. But that still doesn't mean the assumption is correct. You know what I mean? In fact, the very point of that is that the assumption is incorrect. Lauren did not know much of the machinations between the Nine Lands, but even children knew that Dorsey often launched raids on the kingdoms that lay upon its borders, which was all of them if you counted the oceans. They may have yet, said Jordell. We do not know whom these men serve, and I would wager that, like as not, they do not owe allegiance to Selvin. What is it? Said Jem. He tried to wriggle up between them to the hill's crown. Lauren shoved him back. I must get closer, murmured Jordell. If I could but speak with one of them. Jem was undaunted and had moved to Lauren's other side. Now he sidled up behind her like a worm. He gave a low whistle between his teeth. An army proper, no mistake, he whispered. One more sight I never saw in Cabris. We could approach a sentry, Lauren suggested. Approach a sentry without identifying yourself, and you ask for the arrow they will plant in your brain. Jordell shook his head. No, I must enter the camp. No, I must enter the camp. Enter the camp, squeaked Jem, filled with soldiers who may want to kill you? I have faced greater dangers before, said Jordell mildly. Men do not often look for danger among their own comrades. And I look for danger not at all, said Jem. I will see you back at the carriage. He turned to scamper away down the hillside. Lauren whirled on him. Do not run off by yourself, you fool. I run alone towards safety, he called back. You go accompanied towards peril. Who is the fool? He did not slow his pace, and soon he had disappeared behind the crest of the next hill. Lauren gave a low growl. Let him be, said Jordell. He is right, and will be safer at Seth's side. Not when I get hold of him, muttered Lauren. He needs a stern lesson in following orders. Jordell chuckled. I shall leave such lessons to you. Now let us approach the camp. Lauren drew back. You mean for me to come with you? Unless you would wait here, but you have a witty tongue, and quick words might serve well to lower their guard. Lauren felt tiny pinpricks of pleasure, and was not humble enough to be ashamed of them. Very well. It is a pleasure to... Oh, pleasure twice in the same paragraph. Let's fix that. Yeah, Butters. I wouldn't phrase it like that, but the whole point of the gender challenges in Underrealm is to make people recognize their own implicit bias. Which is, implicit bias is something that we all have. Another way that I do that, or that I try to do that a lot in Underrealm, is, for example, I'll have a scene where Lauren comes upon guards, right? And there's guards, and then the guards confront her, and then they fight her, and then one of the guards raises her sword. And up until that moment, almost every single reader assumes that both guards were men. But then I say the guard raised her sword, and the reader's like, wait, what? And like, most editors, and I have had editors who have said, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should clarify right at the beginning that one of the guards is a woman, because this throws the reader off. And I'm like, I'm okay with that, because it throws them off because of something that they assumed, which was incorrect. And it makes them wonder why they assumed that. And if they don't like being challenged in that way, they're not going to like my books whatsoever. They're not going to, they're like, and I don't want them reading them. You know, if they dislike being made more aware of the way that they think about the world, then fuck them. Go read Wheel of Time. It's not going to challenge you at all. Except it's going to challenge your endurance. That's the only thing it's going to challenge. Yeah, that's true, 6-6. But like, again, all these like real world arguments kind of fade away, right? Because it's like, this isn't the real world. You get what I mean? Again, there's a difference between having a good reason to make an assumption, which you did have a good reason to make that assumption, and having and the assumption being correct. The assumption is factually incorrect. The reasons behind it were understandable, right? Oh, I'm such a fan of the Wheel of Time. I talk about it nonstop. I'm always talking about it. I talk about it in my email autoresponder. I talk about it on my YouTube channel. Clearly, I'm a fan. Oh, Lauren felt tiny pinpricks of pleasure and was not humble enough to be ashamed of them. Very well, it is a relief to deal with one who prefers a ready word to a ready sword. Come then, walk as I do and try to look as though you belong. And whatever you do, do not reveal your dagger. I wish now that you had left it at the carriage. Come. Many small bushes and trees lay between them and the sentries, a line of men clearly visible halfway to the army. Each man was tall and grim and carried a longbow of yew. Jordell led her from cover to cover. Hold on. Jordell discarded his cloak. Okay, I wanted to make sure he wasn't still wearing the red cloak, because you can't just walk up to his sentry and be like, "Hello, fellow mercenary! I am a sellsword, much as you are." You're a mystic. What? No, no! What? What would make you say that? I forgot to take my cloak off, didn't I? You did forget to take your cloak off. I am anybody can get a red cloak. You have the badge. You have the badge. You have the mystic badge. Hey, what are you talking about? Many small bushes and trees lay between them and the sentries, a line of men clearly visible halfway to the army. Each man was tall and grim and carried a longbow of yew. Each soldier. See, I have my own implicit biases. I write man or men lots of times when I just mean soldiers. Each soldier was tall and grim and carried a longbow of yew. Jordell led her from cover to cover, but still Lauren felt exposed before those mighty bows, which were nearly as tall as the men. Lauren felt exposed before those mighty bows, which were nearly as tall as the sentries themselves. She was surprised to see how easily the mystic moved. His feet fell soft and quiet as her own, and he melted into the terrain like a woodsman. Lauren realized suddenly that she knew little about this man, the lands of his birth, or how he was raised. Mayhap he, too, had grown up in a forest. The thought held a curious appeal, and she resolved to ask him once they were safely back at the camp. I just realized I want to make double sure. Hello. Good, okay. Soon they had neared the sentry line, and there Jordell stopped. They hid behind a cleft in two hills, where a tumble of rocks let them hide while still peeking out to sea. But the sentries ranged across a line of unbroken ground, with no chance to slip by undetected. Always they kept their eyes turned outwards. Jordell studied them for a long time, while Lauren tried to imagine what he was looking at. "They are most watchful," said Lauren. "They are. What do you think that means?" Lauren thought about it, surprised by the question. It sounded like a test. "If they are watchful, they fear an attack." Her thoughts moved slowly, but they gained speed as the pieces assembled. And here in Selvin, the most likely attack they could expect would come from the king's army. But if they fear a strike from Selvin, then Selvin did not hire them. "Good, good," murmured Jordell. "Who, then?" "If they came from the east, as it would seem from their march, they could be from Wadeland, but this far south I would wager they swear to Dorsey." "And what else? Which direction did they travel, and why?" Lauren's smile turned to a frown. "West and somewhat south." "They do not move for the capital or the great cities, then. What lies west of here?" "Precious little until one finds Wellmont at the southern foot of the Great Rocks. But if they were to turn south now, they would come upon Red Brook, where the King's Road meets the Dragon's Tail River. That would be my guess, though it is an ill thought." Lauren's head spun at the names of so many unfamiliar things. "I do not understand. I have never heard of these places. Are they important?" "Yes, for many reasons, but now is not the time for a lesson in politics or in history. Suffice to say that it is now more urgent than ever that we find this army's purpose." She never asked him, did she? I don't remember. Soldiers, guards, doctors, etc. Totally biased. Who never asked who? Alex, I'm sorry, I'm confused. "But how can we slip between them?" said Lauren. "We will not become invisible just because we know their allegiance." "Agreed," Jordell sighed. "What I would not give for a wizard to distract them, I had hoped to walk among them without bloodshed." Lauren felt a chill and turned to Jordell with a frown. "Bloodshed? You do not mean to kill them." He turned to meet her with a steady gaze, and Lauren felt suddenly uncomfortable before his light blue eyes, but he spoke in a voice of deep calm and not of wrath. "I would not take a life except at great need." "At utmost need, and mayhap not even then," said Lauren. "I thought you preferred a sharp tongue to a blade." "Always, and I would that we lived in a world where no blood need ever be spilt. But—" "No!" barked Lauren, louder than she meant to. They both ducked on reflex, peering out at the sentries again, but her shout had gone unheard. "No," she repeated in a murmur. "I have heard honeyed words before, coaxing me to admit that murder was needed. I did not listen then, nor will I now. If you mean to kill anyone, leave me free from it. Do these sentries threaten your life?" "Not yet, but one small army in the wrong place could spell the doom of many." That man, Lauren insisted, pointing at the sentry straight ahead of them. What has he done? Is he a villain? Does he plot the overthrow of Selvin? What is his crime that you would lop off his head? Jordell looked at the sentry and then turned to study Lauren. He stayed silent so long she feared he was gathering his anger to lash out at her, either with words or with his hands. She braced herself to run. Instead, his breath came out in a long, whispering sigh before he spoke. You are right. Lauren blinked. I am? You are. Many claim to spill blood only when they must. Few who say so can live up to their words. I forgot myself for a moment, but you have reminded me. I am sorry. Lauren could find no reply. No one, not her father, nor Damaris, nor Auntie, had ever taken her side. Most took her for a fool child, unwise in the ways of the world. Even Jem and Annis, who were younger than she was. Before she could answer or Jordell could speak further, they heard a shout and the clamor of hooves. They ducked behind the rocks, Jordell's hand flying to his sword hilt. Together they peeked through a gap in the rocks. From over the hills came flying 2 mercenaries on horseback, outriders for the army. They carried long lances and had small bucklers on their arms, but Lauren spent little time studying the riders after she spied the bundle slung across the back of one of their saddles. It was a small figure tied up and strapped to the horse, and that figure was Jem. Oh, that's chapter 3 done. Yay! Chapter 4. The head of one of the sentries snapped up and he knocked an arrow as he sped forwards, but one of the riders called out twin lights and the sentry lowered his bow. The riders pulled to a stop not far from the rocks where Jordell and Lauren lay, and the sentry came forwards to meet them. Well met, said the sentry. What have you there? A small creature scuttling through these hills, said one of the riders. He has a shifty look to him, and his eyes are wide enough to see too much. The sentry came to Jem and grabbed the boy's hair, jerking his head up to look at his face. Jem winced with pain, but a gag muffled his cry. Lauren winced and went to move forwards, but Jordell restrained her with a hand on her arm. We must help him, whispered Lauren. Hold a moment, said Jordell. I am thinking. He is more than a decade from being a man, declared the sentry. You never can tell with spies, said the rider. I have heard the king of Selvin recruits them this young, so that you would never look at them twice. And spy or not, one set of prying eyes is as bad as the next. True enough, grunted the sentry. Off with them, then. They have put the cages in the... Hail, said Jordell, jumping to his feet and dragging Lauren with him. They stepped out from the rocks as the sentry and outriders turned in astonishment. Once again the sentry's bow leapt up, but Jordell raised both hands and cried, Twin lights! The bow lowered, but slowly, and the sentry's frown remained. On the horse's back, Jem's eyes grew wide, and he ceased his struggling against the bonds that held him. I do not know your face, said the sentry. What are you doing out here? I do not know most of the faces here, said Jordell, shrugging amiably. I am Bricken's man, a new face picked up on the road. One of the outriders looked at the other, frowning. Brickend? I do not know a Brickend. I know 3, replied the other. Brickens run rampant in this land. An odd name, but common as weeds. Lauren studied them curiously. The outriders spoke in strange voices and had brown skin darker than most in Selvin. Black hair spilled to their shoulders, and they stood shorter than those who dwelt in the birchwood. She wondered where they hailed from. But she had looked long and had finally drawn their notice. The sentry nodded at her. Who is that one, he growled. Not one of ours, I know, for she is far too young. No, indeed, said Jordell. I have traveled through these parts before, and I knew of a farmhouse not far away. I went to visit, and the girl wished to see the army. The outriders looked slyly at each other, and even the sentry's face seemed to lighten. Lauren's cheeks burned as she understood their thoughts, but the lie was told, and she had little choice but to play along. So she let her blush deepen and ducked her head under her cowl as she giggled. I never thought to find so many of you here, she said, letting her voice quiver. It is like seeing the great war hosts of old, something from father's stories. Jem rolled his eyes at her words, she noticed with annoyance. She wanted to cuff him. The riders guffawed, but the sentry scowled at Lauren and turned to Jordell. This is no place for sightseeing. She shall remember our numbers as well as any enemy's spy. Jordell waved a hand airily. She has no wish to return home just yet, nor if she did so would anything to ask her about us. Mayhap she will travel with me for a while. Lauren tittered again and turned away as if bashful. If I would be no burden. Again the outriders laughed. One of them used the butt of his lance to jostle the sentry on foot. No burden she would be indeed, eh? I say good for the man. Aye, leave them be, friend, said the other rider. She looks a pretty thing. Mayhap she would like to lighten the load of some others? He grinned at Lauren and kissed the air twice. She blushed deeper. Jordell's hand moved to his side where his sword hung ready. The air went chill as though from a sudden wind, and the mystic's voice came sharp as steel. Surely no warrior of Delmoon would think to press himself unwelcome even in this faraway land. A sellsword should have more honor. The rider shook his head quickly. You mistake me, friend. I give an offer, not an obligation. I'm not fool enough to invite the king's harshest law. Jordell relaxed. I am glad to hear tales of Delmoon gallantry are no exaggeration. But what of your own passenger? That is no quail strung across your saddle, though he looks small enough to be. For the entire writing process, I write in Scrivener, except for editing. For writing the book, I write in Scrivener. Microsoft Word has track changes, and track changes is still the best editing tool that exists, which is annoying because Word sucks. I fucking hate Microsoft Word, but track changes is too powerful. It is the most powerful editing tool, period. So when I'm editing my book, I export the file to Microsoft Word. My editor reads it in Microsoft Word and makes her changes in Microsoft Word and then sends it back to me with all of her changes being tracked, and then I approve or disapprove each change. I have not, 6-6. What is that? Sci-fi novel. Pretty lackluster cover. I think sci-fi needs better covers, man. There's very few really amazing sci-fi covers out there. At least in my mind. I added it to my wish list, so I will get it and read it at some point. All right, thanks, Alex. Yeah, exactly. And like Ender's Game. Ender's Game is my favorite sci-fi book of all time. It's amazing. It's incredible. I've never seen a good Ender's Game cover, you know? They're bad. They're just bad. All right, here we go. Yeah, but the trailer park stacks are not... They're not what defines that book. I don't look at that, and that's not that's not even an interesting part of Ready Player One to me. That's not I don't care about the trailer park stacks for Ready Player One. And I hate that because everybody lists Ready Player One as like this great cover. I'm like, it doesn't fucking matter. That's like having Lord of the Rings, where the cover is Tom Bombadil and nothing else. Like, not Frodo, not Bilbo, or any of the hobbits, not Gandalf or Aragorn. Just Tom Bombadil. That would be the worst cover. Doesn't matter how good the art is, or how awesome Tom Bombadil looks, or his wife. That's a bad cover. Because he has nothing to do with the story. Not that he has nothing to do with the story. Not that the trailer stacks have nothing to do with the story. But, like, that is so infinitesimally unrelated. I have had lots of conversations with people about the Ready Player One cover. I'm very passionate about it. Rip ears. Sorry about that. I try not to use Apple Pages, Darth Smork. I had to use Apple Pages for a second because my Microsoft Word was bugged, but I got the help of tech support and reverted to an earlier version. And now Microsoft Word works again. And Microsoft Word is better. Apple Pages works, and it has track changes, but they're just not as good as Word. You know? No, Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil doesn't live in Frodo's house. Tom Bombadil lives in the middle of the fucking forest, in the Great Forest, just outside of the Shire. And if you haven't read the books, you don't even know who the fuck Tom Bombadil is, because they didn't put him in the movie, because it doesn't fucking matter. Hey, what's up, Rhino? Welcome back. We're in the middle of a very intense discussion about book covers. Well, find something about the book. Why isn't the cover of Ender's Game, why doesn't it show the battle room? Why don't they get somebody to draw the fucking battle room? Which is the coolest thing! And the only good part of the terrible movie that they made out of Ender's Game was the battle room. Why isn't that on the cover? What's another favorite sci-fi book? Oh, you know who does this great? Fucking the Star Wars books. Look what's on the cover. It's the Death Star. Because the Death Star is a thing. Under the Empyrean Sky, another Chuck Wendig book. That is one of the floating cities from Under the Empyrean Sky. What do we got? Okay. The stars, I guess this is an artsy cover, so like... But this is not a good artsy cover. The Star's My Destination. Great book. Who's it by again? It's by, what's his face? Alfred Bester. Yes. Great book. The fuck does this mean? Why is there the hand? I've read the book. I can tell you that hand holding the little planet or ball of fire, I guess it is, doesn't have anything to do with the book. Why? Why don't they draw the character from the book? Or one of the key locations from the book? Through what medium do your beta alpha readers give feedback? I give them Tom is the Bombadil. Ha ha. My my beta readers get an ebook. Although this year I would not mind switching over to print, except some of my beta readers are like actually a lot of my beta readers are in other countries. Yeah, he's in that for most of the story in Ready Player One, but who cares? The real world in Ready Player One, except for near the end of the book where he does the stuff that he does in the book, the real world is not as interesting as Oracle. Oracle? No, what's it called? Oasis. Jurassic Park is a great cover. Wait, what's the original Jurassic Park cover? Well, Jurassic Park is a great cover, though. It's simple, and it's like, boom! Tyrannosaurus Rex! That's what this book is about. And that is, well, it's kind of what the story is about. It's about the people, and it's about more dinosaurs than just the T-Rex. But it's like, hey, motherfucker, you want dinosaurs? We got a dinosaur theme park. Boom! What else do we got? I have some indie sci-fi books on my shelf, but I don't want to call them out because they're fellow indies. Here's one. All of Orson Scott Card's books, really. Okay, Past Watch by Orson Scott Card. Past Watch. What do you think it's about? What do you think the book is about? You see the stars? Do you see all the stars? It's a sci-fi book. Orson Scott Card is a sci-fi author, and the cover is a blank field of blue and purple stars. So what do you think the book is about? What do you think that this based on that cover? What do you think this book is about? So I want to actually see some people guess in chat. Guess what this book is about. It's about time travel on Earth. There's no outer space. There's no space travel. It's about time travel, and 90% of it takes place in prehistoric Southern America. So what the fuck is that cover doing on that book? Anyway. You were part right, KJ Jones, yes. Hold on one sec. All right, I got to keep going. Y'all are getting me distracted. Do. She is not at a ball for half a page in chapter 1, Chicken Sandwich. You liar. You are lying and misrepresenting me. This one, the writer reached back and thumped Jem's back hard enough to draw a groan. Mayhap a spy, or simply a small child on his own, far from home. It hardly matters. He will get the question all the same, and like is not a swift end. You know the captain. Silent and swift, he says again and again. Until I think my ears might fall off, said Jordell with a nod. But this one hardly looks to be a spy. Not even Selvin gets them this young. He moved like one, and he squealed like one when we caught him, said the writer. And now I think we had best be getting him on, for I have been too long without a meal. Lauren's gut clenched. Struck by an idea, she wandered forwards, her eyes wonderstruck. She came to Jem, who stared at her with pleading eyes. But this is only the little boy from the next farm over. Her voice was sing-song, airy and vacant, like a girl somewhat overwhelmed by the world. I have known him since he was born, and a ripe little squealer he has always been. She raised her eyes to the writer, all innocence and curiosity. Everything fell dead silent, and both outriders glared at Lauren in sudden suspicion. Their gaze drifted to Jordell behind her, and she felt a sinking hole grow in her stomach. Jem winced as though in pain. What had she done? He told us he was a riverman's son, said one of the riders, wandering off from his father's boat while it rested on the bank. Lauren's mouth fell open, but she could find no words. She had grown suddenly very aware of the size of the men on horseback, and of the sentry standing unseen somewhere behind her. So, river boy or farmer's son, growled the other rider, which lie to believe? Mayhap we have laid hands on 2 spies instead of 1. Or mayhap 3 of the other began, turning towards Jordell, but he never finished, for the mystic leapt forwards with drawn sword and hacked the front legs from beneath the man's mount. The warrior pitched to the ground with a cry, and Jem tumbled from the saddle into the grass with a sharp groan. Lauren seized the boy by his bonds and dragged him away from the horse's flailing rear hooves as the creature screamed on the ground in agony. Lauren stood just in time to see Jordell strike again. This time his blade plunged into the chest of the second rider, and the man fell dumbstruck from the saddle. Jordell seized the reins with a sword hand as he spun, shoving them into Lauren's grip. She seized them without thinking. Too seized, too close together. How many books have you read, 6-6? Then yes, Chet does appear again. KJ Jones, I can't wait for you to finish Shadeborn, or to keep going on. I actually don't know where you're at on Shadeborn, but yeah, if you're reading Shadeborn right now, yes. All right. Oh, there's many C's too close together, aren't there? You hope everybody is a wizard, 6-6. Weren't you the one who was just hoping that Lauren was a wizard? Depends, chicken sandwich. I'll usually try to come up with something on my own because I do use a thesaurus, and I want to say that. I think that a thesaurus is a very useful tool for a writer, but you should never look at a thesaurus and go, oh, that's an interesting word. Your only correct, the only word you should ever choose out of a thesaurus is the word that you're looking through the thesaurus and you see a word and you go, that's the one I was looking for. In other words, you already know it. You're conversant with it. You know, you were like, I know there's a word and it's like problem, but it's not problem. And then you're looking through thesaurus, through a thesaurus, and you go, complication. That's the word I was looking for, and I couldn't think of what it is. That's my personal view on the right way to use a thesaurus. You shouldn't go, I don't know. 6-6, yes. Ugh. Well, anyway, I can't really pull. Go through a thesaurus and think, I need a thesaurus. So you shouldn't go looking through thesaurus.com. Problem is a bad example. But you shouldn't go looking through thesaurus.com and go problem. I need a word and it's like problem, but it's not. And you go through and you're like, ooh, botheration. That sounds fancy. Like, bad. Run away. Do not use that word. If that's the way you feel about it, don't use thesaurus words that excite you. Use thesaurus words that solve your problem. In other words, you had a problem and you were like, I know the word, but I just can't think of it right now. That's what you use a thesaurus for. Whoop. Jor-El jumped forwards, for the other rider had regained his feet. The taller man dropped his lance in favor of a curved blade at his waist, but in 3 quick strokes Jor-El had struck the weapon away. His blade flashed in the sunlight once more, and the rider sank to his knees. His head rolled away through the grass, spurting blood. Lauren wanted to scream, but she was struck dumb. Her eyes darted to the last man, the sentry on foot, and she saw him with an arrow nocked and at full draw. He stood well out of reach of Jor-El's sword, and finally Lauren raised her voice in a shout, trying to warn the mystic, even though it was surely too late. The sentry let fly, the bowstring twanged, but just as it did, Jordell threw his knife from his belt. It was a wild throw, and the blade missed the sentry by more than a pace, but threw off his aim. The arrow flew wide and sank deep into the ground paces behind him, buried up to the fletching. Lauren joined the sentry in a disbelieving gape, even as Jordell lunged, even as his sword took first the archer's hand and then lay open his chest and finally split the man's head nearly in half down the middle. Red spurted across Jordell's body, spattering his face, his silvery hair, his light tunic, but Lauren had grown numb to the blood, to the fighting and killing she had wanted so badly to avoid. She could only see the arrow missing him by a handbreadth. He turned and came to her quickly. Lauren shied away, but he dropped to his knee beside Jem and drew the dirk from his boot. In a moment, the boy's bonds were cut and the gag removed from his mouth. Thank you, gasped Jem. Up, said Jordell, but he did not wait before raising the boy by the shoulders. He took the reins from Lauren and leapt into the saddle, seizing Jem's wrist and dragging the boy up to sit before him. Come, Lauren, quickly. Jordell held out a hand ready to pull her up behind him. Lauren could only stare, unable to move. A horn blast split the air. A ways off she saw a sentry looking at them, horn raised to his lips. Another blast cut the air, and the sellsword army erupted like a hill of ants. Lauren saw many men leaping to horseback throughout the camp. Lauren, barked Jordell, if we do not leave at once, our corpses will join theirs. Come. Lauren hated it, but she could see the truth in his words. She raised her hand and let Jordell pull her up, sliding into the saddle behind him. She wrapped her arms around his wide chest, linking her hands so she did not have to press her palms against him. Jem bounced back against her wrists as the mystic spurred the horse in a circle, climbing over the rise behind them and down the other side, riding east as fast as they could while the mercenaries roiled behind them. Chapter 4 done. Yes, a handbreadth is actually a word that I believe is proper English even today. That's what I was doing. So we're all familiar. I think we're all decently familiar with the phenomenon of walking into a room and forgetting why you came into the room. The way that manifests itself with me most often is I'll start alt-tabbing through my programs and I'm like, the fuck was I doing? What was I alt-tabbing for? What program was I looking for? All right, we've been going for a while, so I'm going to take another quick break. I will be back soon. All right. One more chapter, and then I'm done for the night. All right, chapter 5. They came upon the camp in a clatter of hoofbeats to find Seth standing by the carriage, a naked sword in one hand and a dagger in the other. The driver's blades dipped as he saw them, but his face did not relax. "We are pursued," said Jordell quickly. "Leave the carriage. Load the horses with whatever we cannot do without." Without a word, Seth went to do as he was asked. Lauren slid from the horse, anxious to be away from Jordell. The mystic dismounted next, and finally Jem jumped from the saddle. To Lauren's horror, he wore a wide grin. "You were like a great warrior from the old tales," cried Jem. "You went through them like they were only children." Jordell did not acknowledge the words. He did not even look at the boy. Instead, he fixed Lauren with a pointed gaze when it took her a moment to return. "I did not wish it," he said. "I have heard that said before," said Lauren. "Do you think I am like the merchant? Have I given you cause to fear for your life? Poisoned you? Sent the constables to hunt you down like a dog? To lock you up like a murderer? Not yet, but Damaris too killed others long before she turned her wrath on me." Seth appeared before Jordell could reply. The driver had cut the carriage horses free, and both bore saddlebags packed with supplies. In one hand he held Jordell's red cloak. "Ready we are, and the sooner gone the better, I say," said Seth. Jordell took the cloak and fastened it about his throat. "I shall ride with the boy. You are heaviest. I will take him." Seth put one set of reins in Jordell's hand and went to Lauren with another. Lauren took a hasty step back. "I do not have enough skill in the saddle." "Can you keep from falling off, at least?" growled Seth. "Any horse that bears you and one of us will be caught. You will ride alone or doom us all." "I will ride beside you and keep a ready hand on your horse's rein," said Jordell. "We must travel with speed, but you need not fear." Lauren bit her tongue before telling him that her greater fear did not stem from the horse. She swung herself up into the saddle. Jordell took her reins, and together they led their horses out of the trees and onto the road. There the mystic spurred to a gallop, and Lauren's horse leapt to life beneath her. Ugh. She flung herself down and seized the beast's neck, clinging for dear life as its muscles bunched and thrust beneath her. Every jostle threatened to pitch her from the saddle, but somehow she held on. They rode and rode, slowing to a trot once an hour to keep the horses from collapse. Yeah, I chose to allow for hours chicken sandwich because hours of the day have actually existed since we started counting time. Like, hours are one of the oldest things we have, right? The day was divided up into 24 hours before anything. Like going back to prehistory. So I chose to keep hours, but minutes are, in terms of human history, minutes are a much more recent thing. Seconds are a much more recent thing. And then you get into milliseconds and all that sort of stuff. So hours exist. Minutes and seconds do not. Because even though there were people in medieval times who used minutes or calculated minutes as a unit of time, it was very uncommon. Just like... I don't know of a good analogy, but it was not normal for the common folk or whatever. All right, good to see you, 6-6. They rode and rode, slowing to a trot once every hour to keep the horses from collapse. Lauren turned to look back every time they slowed, but she never caught a glimpse of the sellswords. As the sun neared the horizon to their right, she felt herself relax somewhat. It seemed they would not be pursued, or that they had left their pursuers behind. By sunset, Jordell allowed the horses to slow to a walk. Once he did, he turned to Lauren. "They do not pursue us. Why?" Lauren was surprised by the question and not entirely pleased. "I am in no mood for your riddle games, Mystic." Jordell gave a heavy sigh. "Lauren, I understand your concern, but if I had not struck when I did, they might have alerted the others. If they had, we should not have rescued Jem so easily." "Easily? 3 bodies lay soaked in blood behind us. Their bones will go to rest far from their homes, untended by their families. Mayhap they had wives, brothers, sons, who will never know how they died." "It is not an easy truth to face," said Jordell, "and yet that is the lot of a sellsword, and no man signs the company bill without knowing that truth." "A fine excuse for the man who laid them to waste," spat Lauren. "I make no excuse," said Jordell quietly. "I have killed fewer men than I could in my life, and yet over many years the number has grown too high. I excuse none of it. There is always a way to avoid it. Yet I am like any man and prone to error." "It was not error that drove your blade, but terrible fury," said Lauren, "and no words of yours will tell me otherwise." Jordell left her alone after that, though she often caught him looking at her afterwards. Soon Seth found a clearing not far off the road, close to the river and hidden by a rocky rise. There they made a camp with no fire, for Jordell still feared detection. Seth chose to erect a tent, but Jordell went without, as did Lauren. Jem still felt drawn to lie and look at the stars. The air hung thick and silent with tension, broken only by occasional meaningless words from the mystic and the driver. Gone were any thoughts of asking Jordell about his childhood. Lauren tried not to even look upon him. After a quick and bland meal, she stood. "I shall be back." "Where are you going?" said Seth, looking at her with suspicion. "That is not your business," snapped Lauren. "To make water, then?" "Let her be," Seth said Jordell. He studied Lauren for a long moment. "Will you return?" Lauren's nostrils flared. "I said I would." "Good." The mystic nodded, and that was that. Lauren headed for the river, following it south until she could no longer hear Seth and Jordell's conversation. She found a log that jutted out into the river and sat upon it, pulling off her boots and dipping her bare feet in the water. Tilting her head back, she stared up at the stars, but they seemed to glow red as if doused in the blood of the men Jordell had slain that morning. That image was slow to leave her mind. "He had no choice, you know." Jem's quiet voice startled her, and for a moment Lauren thought she might slip from the log, but she regained her balance with a quiet curse as the boy sidled out to sit beside her. "There is always a choice," said Lauren. "Always. Even choosing to die rather than kill is a choice." "Not one I would ever make," snorted Jem. "I'm not too proud to say I value my own neck above any others. Even yours, you will forgive my saying." "I do forgive your saying," said Lauren. Then, with a sharp shove, she pitched Jem into the river. He sank beneath the current with a yelp, and Lauren laughed. His head broke the surface a moment later, arms thrashing. She heard him cry, "Help!" before he sank again. She realized her mistake immediately. Jem had grown up in the city, and Cabris's filthy sewers were not fit for swimming. He had likely never learned. Lauren shot up and pitched herself into the water. Almost immediately she found a thrashing form in the darkness. She seized it before swimming for the riverbank. A few strokes brought her to standing depth, and she only caught Jem's elbow in her ear once or twice before she had him safe on the dirt, sputtering and coughing. "You crazy witch!" cried the boy. "Were you trying to kill me?" "Oh, leave off," said Lauren, giving him another shove. He fell into the sand of the riverbank, and as he rose it stuck to his soaked clothes. "How was I to know you could not swim? Besides, the river is practically shallow enough to stand all the way across." "For you, mayhap, you great tree," Jem grumbled. He ducked into the shallows again to get the sand off. "My body was built for wisdom and cleverness, not for height." Lauren laughed at that. Soon Jem had wrung himself as dry as he was going to get. Together they climbed to the top of the bank where the grass formed a cushion for them to sit. Lauren cast her hair out in the warm summer night's breeze, thankful the air had not cooled over much since daylight. Jem spoke first. "In any case, what do you mean to do about it? If you would sooner take a blade than use one, that is your way. It is not Jordell's, nor most people's. Will you abandon anyone who dares fight for a living, or for their own life? You will soon find yourself more lonely than you might wish." "I will not bandy about with the killer," said Lauren firmly, "and I will not excuse those who take another's life when they could spare it. You saw the way he fought. He could have struck them all unconscious without spilling their blood. He moved fast enough. He acted quickly out of fear. Fear for our lives, not for his own, unless I miss my guess. And he acted on instinct, without knowing half what he was doing, as you did when you threw me into the drink. I might have died then, but would you have spent your whole life moping?" Lauren looked at him in shock. "Of course. Do you think you mean so little to me that I would not mourn your death?" "I mean to see you live to old age, Jem, a rich and lazy scholar who spends his days reading books." Jem scoffed and turned away. She placed a hand on his shoulder and turned him back towards her. "I mean it, Jem. I would have done anything to save you, from the water just now or from the riders today. I only think it could have been done without murdering soldiers whose names we did not know and who did us no harm." The boy pursed his lips. He slowly looked up into Lauren's eyes while his own glinted with starlight. "I will tell you something now, Lauren, and I will speak to you truly. No one has stuck themselves out for me before, certainly never so far as you. It takes getting used to, but those men today would have killed me, and not quick or honorable. Given a choice, I will take the man who spills blood for me in an instant over the girl who takes an hour figuring out a way to not hurt anyone." Lauren's heart felt suddenly frozen. Slowly she withdrew her hand. Well, mayhap next time I will let them carry you off to die, then. I meant no offense, only nothing. Come, we should be getting back. Though he followed, Lauren could see the misery in his expression and gait, yet she could not find it within her to care. Was she mad for holding that each life was sacred, that no one, man or woman, held the right to kill with ease? If I'm the only one, then curse them all. I would rather stand alone on the side of right than stand on the side of wrong with an army at my back. But that did not calm her turning doubts, nor did it help her sleep. She lay awake for a long, long time, staring up at the moons before slumber finally claimed her. She came awake with a start, a rough and dirty hand covering her mouth. In an instant she was alert, and she tried to pry the hand away so that she could scream. But in the next instant her eyes met the face above her, and her body fell to sudden stillness. Dark locks swung from the man's head, and a quiet smirk painted his lips. "Greetings, Lauren of the family Nelda," whispered Zane. "Now come quick and quiet before the mystic awakens." Bam! All right, y'all. That's going to be it for me. Oh, 5 chapters done. About 16% of the way through the book. Oh, Lord Almighty. And it is time for me to start moseying towards the end of my night. No problem, chicken sandwich. I love having people around. It is very lonely and boring doing all of this by myself. So I only do this because I like having you hang out. And yeah, that's going to be it for me. Thanks so much for coming and talking with me, y'all. Good to see you. Chicken Sandwich, KJ Jones, 66. A lot of other people here. Rhino, Darth Smork, good to see ya. Alex, who was here briefly. Well, for a long time, actually. Grover. Oh, some of this chat was amazing. And I think that's all I really got on here. And Protostorms, who was here near the beginning. Good to see you all. Hope to see you again. I will be doing more tomorrow for sure. Not sure when, though. So turn on Twitch notifications. All right, y'all. Catch you another time. Bye.